The arms, I can blow myself in the air.
Streamed. Got it.
Oh, man.
Got one.
I stole the cue that was out there. There's cushions if you want. Just decide what you want to do. But that's a little harder than that. Fresh ideas. Is Laura coming?
Laura, yeah, this is tomorrow. Should be opening up.
I have a bit of a problem because I've got one hearing aid, the other one's gone in for service.
Oh, right, that's
Why I was breaking up. I had to go to see what you do. Because
you got all this.
yeah. You okay with it?
Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Laurie. Hi, Murray.
Oh,
Good to see you walking around.
well, yeah.
Yeah, I've got some more things for you. Margaret. Oh, and this is great. I picked up the telly yesterday because I saw one, and it's got all this other puzzles in it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I will. He's a conservative.
Is that?
Hearing in one ear.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Jim picks it up on her way.
I'm sitting over here, so. The other one is, it's got a receiver in the mom, and it's a wire. Not broken yet. It's the same one. So, I must have one helping.
This is good. Working, and it's reasonably warm here.
It's too warm.
I know, so I'm only sitting here because of the TV, because this side better than that side. Oh, there's one. That'd be cool. Oh, tree just yeah. Yes. I expended some energy to get here from my house. That would be wonderful.
He's not in here. There he is.
I should remember.
Last night.
No, last month.
Last month. Oh, wait, it was rainy-ish. We were in
It's really low.
Oh, the class, yeah, those two, yeah, 2 classes ago. It's always July.
It's June. What airline did he pick?
Oh, and what? Don't say anything because he's having a surprise appearance to his sister's wedding. Yeah, so that's why you see the voice of the newsletter, it's thinking about where he's going.
When he
So,
left.
Pastor's taking some time off.
And where is the wedding?
New Jersey. So he's show up for the first dinner it's tomorrow night,
Right.
Friday night. And so that's kind of the thing that's going on for me, why he's doing now.
Oh,
This wedding.
Yeah.
And why he's
Get back. Yeah.
you looked at doing the whole, go to the US for the wedding, come back, turn around and go back to meetings, decided that was insane. So. Oh my goodness, no, I have one too.
And I have a marine. Right, up top in there.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too.
Station or somewhere, other, she was. All right. She didn't like that.
Scott.
Right.
Not close to trying to get, I was out the door yesterday afternoon, I thought, oh, yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. Well, it's like that, he wears, well, so in previous years, he has worn pants in winter weather, and this year I thought he was going to avoid it altogether, but no, he actually this week has begun wearing pants, but still, it's only, what to me is lightweight pants, and yes, shirts make sure, always got a jacket thing over it.
These kids, school kids, oh my goodness, you see them in the shorts and the short sleeve shirts, and they're like, oh.
All right, folks, shall we begin?
Yeah, sorry. Happy New Year, Karen, babysitting at Karen's last night, so she's probably driving this morning, or, it's not in her register. So we won't.
I'm waiting for anybody else. So. No. All right. It's nice. Okay. Licentious Love. Ooh. So this is known as the second part of Conjugial Love. Basically, all the bad ways you mess up. And, Owen brought up the ideas if you don't like it. Oh, but no, look, it's strange. It's weird.
Just about.
It's part of it, pretty much is.
Kind of, it's comfortable.
Well, that's what I want to explore is because the compromise parts of it are the usual parts, really, right? I mean, everybody knows that when you're married, you don't have sex with people you're not married to, or anybody else, I guess, yeah. So we got that. But then the writings also, there are some other weird circumstances. And we're going to explore through that and see the context in which a lot of this is. Not the
Todd?
Yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
The audio is very bad.
All right.
I think
Is that better?
it's sort of echoey, very echoey.
Okay.
There's a chair up here.
I think I'll come up.
Okay. I don't know how to change that. I don't know if that's, well, yeah, you just don't know whether that's him or me. That's the frustration.
So not using the laptop microphone and the external mic.
No, I checked that, and we're on the right router. Yeah, Rode microphone, Sony TV speakers, so. Yeah, all our settings are right. Oh, let me get it. Yes. Well, anyway, he'll be up in a second. So I want to start with this paragraph here, because this is the opening to that section. And it makes clear what we are and what we aren't talking about. Okay, at this threshold, we must first disclose what we mean in this chapter by licentious love. We do not mean the fornicatory love, so sex before marriage, which precedes marriage, nor that which follows it after the death of one's partner, nor the taking of a mistress, which is entered into for legitimate, just, and weighty reasons, nor do we mean the milder kinds of adultery, nor the more serious kinds of which a person actually repents. For the first are not opposed to conjugal love, and the latter do not become opposed. All right, this is a big statement. I mean, we're not talking about just adultery. But what we mean by licentious love that is opposed to conjugal love is a love of adultery. It's a love of adultery. When it is of such a nature that it is not regarded as a sin, but even as something evil and dishonorable contrary to reason, but as something permissible in accord with reason. This is the kind of licentious love not only deems conjugal love to be no different from it, but also ruins it, destroys it, and finally loathes it. All right? So that's the context of the section that we're in, right? It's the love of adultery. And what you're going to see throughout the passage that I've picked here for you is it's something permissible in accord with reason. That's the whole thing, right? There seems to be a fair amount of space for, boy, I did this thing, that wasn't very good. And Lord's like, I can work with that. But when you say, oh, I've done this, and do that again. Thank you very much. Different place to be. And you know, this is what worries me about culture, right? We've taken the lids off of the sexual revolution, and everything is good. It's not only permissible, we're using our reason to say this is good. And that kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Using the law to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, so kind of, put that in the back of your mind as we go through these things. I'm not going to obviously doing every passage in the back here, but I'm trying to throw some highlights. Yeah, exactly. Lowlights perhaps maybe better way. But so let's kind of, what is fornication? All right. We know fornication is sex before marriage. So neither person's married and they have sex. Okay. In some men, a love for the opposite sex cannot, without harmful effects, be totally restrained from going out with fornication. I feel like every guy in my high school class was like, yeah, that's me. There is no point recounting the harmful effects which excessive restraint of love for the opposite sex can cause and inflict in men who struggle with sexual heat owing to an inordinate sexual abundance. In their case, it gives rise to the origins of certain physical maladies and mental illnesses. Not to mention little known evils, which are too unspeakable to be named.
All this from excessive restraint, not from excessive doing, from excessive restraint. Wow.
Yeah.
So this is back to like, all right, the weird parts of the back part of conjugal love, right? This is kind of one of those things where, one other church has this in their doctrine that, well, young men just don't, engage in activities, then they're gonna have problems.
Well, there's one book in the Bible that you haven't mentioned in this, and I've read some of it, and it's quite a bit, Song of Songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Song of Songs. I mean,
It does.
that is a bit, you look at it and go, wow, that's in the Bible. Wow. Yeah.
It's not in.
Conjugal.
It's in the Bible, but it's not in the New Church canon.
No, it's not in the New Church. I didn't think so. Yeah, but it is interesting to read.
So yeah. Well,
I'll probably see
sorry. The other thing I've underlined here is the whole, not to mention little known evils which are too unspeakable to be named. All right. Anybody guess why I underlined that?
It's been something to do with.
Oh,
Because it's not named, therefore, but it's okay.
No, well,
People sometimes.
what I run into is people saying, oh, the writings don't talk about homosexuality. They do a word search and they look up for homosexuality, think like that. And it's not there. Sure. But this is the euphemism for it. It talks about it in these terms a number of places, and you'll see some more here yet this morning. But just trying to draw your attention that when somebody tries to say, oh, the writings don't talk about that. Yes, they do. They don't call it that because the word homosexuality didn't exist in the 1700s. It wasn't called that. So, I don't really make it to be a class about that, but I want you to be aware as that's an argument that's out
Some of that results from could result from excessive restraint.
there. Yep. Yeah, and the yeah, you're right. Thanks for bringing us back to the main point of the passage. It's just, how do you know, right? How do you know if you're a young man, at what point, yeah. Oh, I can restrain. No, I can't. Where do you, what is an inordinate sexual abundance?
I'm just wondering, Todd, could this as part of the rethink piece has been written from a man's point of view?
I have definitely,
What about if we can go with a woman?
look, that's a claim I have heard. There's a certain reasonableness to it particularly as we go through these things, you will see that, yeah, generally it is written from more from the guy's point of view. I wouldn't dispute that too much. I wouldn't argue that either.
But that would say that it's not inspired, then it's just the work of a 18th century male mind. If somebody were to argue that, could they argue that?
I don't think those two necessarily tie together. It can be written from a man's point of view, an enlightened man's point of view, without necessarily having to include a female point of view to say it's the word of God. It can still be the word of God.
I agree with that. I'm just wondering, some people question its.
Sure.
Basis.
Yes, I do think that is correct. Some people do that. I don't think that's a fair argument to make. The next, it continues on. It is different with those whose love for the opposite sex is moderate enough they can resist the urges of its lust. Likewise with those who at a youthful age, without any loss of worldly fortunes, thus at the first opportunity, have the freedom to introduce themselves into a legitimate companionship of the bed. Since the latter is what happens with little children in heaven when they grow up to marriageable age, Therefore, they do not know that what fornication is. However, the situation is not the same on earth, where marriages cannot be contracted until past early manhood, as is the case for many in government service, where positions must be earned over a period of time, and the means acquired for supporting a home and family before they can, for the first time, seek a suitable wife. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, so this is, if I'm understanding it correctly, saying that in heaven or in a place where you don't have to worry about worldly concerns, they can basically marry because they don't have to wait until they can support a family or whatever. So there's not, they marry young. Yeah. Age, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're getting that exactly right.
Yeah. Just like,
Yep. This is a deference to practicalities, isn't it?
yeah, worldly needs, yeah.
It's, yeah, you know, if you could, we'd marry you off at what, 16? You know, you can wait till you're 16 years old, but can you wait till you're 25? Yeah, I mean, but it is different. Like you think of the world today, how many of your kids got married before the age of 25? One? Yeah. So there you go. You know, it's, I look at my sibling group. I was 24, my brother was 27. Sister, I
23.
yeah, okay, that's right. She was. So anyway, but it's the trend's very clear that people are marrying at an older age these days than they used to. I mean, you and Lori both got married in early 20s, didn't you?
No, he was really old. I was 20.
You're 20.
He was really old.
Yeah. You were.
Yeah, really old.
So. How old were you got married?
24.
24. Yeah.
Good age.
I feel like that's, my parents think were 23. 72 is when they got married. Dad was born in 49, mom was born in 48. So she was not.
Yeah.
Oh, see, Dad was born in 41. That's like as old as mine. Okay. Oh, yeah, my parents had to wait for the war. Yeah.
He was 29 or 30 or something.
Yeah, my grandparents did the same thing. You know, they waited till the war was done to get married. So. So yeah, I mean, but that's what this is pointing to, these practicalities of life that, you know, if somebody doesn't wait till they're married, if they're gonna wait till 27 or whatever to get married, then no, it's not the end of the world. It's different. And it's, you know, part of the thing here, you gotta get back to the touchstone at the beginning. What is this chapter about? It's not about milder forms of things gone wrong. It's about people who love adultery, people who excuse it and make it good. You know, it's yes, thank you, justify it. That's right. So it's like, you know, some things happen. It's not the end of the world. As long as you're not opposing conjugal love. This includes premarital prostitutes. Oh, now we get to some good stuff, right? So, in men who are not yet able for various reasons to enter into marriage, and because of their salaciousness cannot control their lusts, this conjugal ideal may be preserved if their love for the opposite sex becomes restricted to its single courtesan, also known as a prostitute. Reason sees and experience attest that men who are salacious cannot contain their excessive and inordinate lusts. Therefore, in order for this excessive and inordinate drive to be restrained and reduced to something more moderate and temperate in men who struggle with sexual heat, and who, for a number of reasons, cannot hasten or anticipate the time of their marriage, the only apparent recourse and refuge, so to speak, seems to be their resorting to courtesy.
But on the line, the same one.
Correct. That's right.
What are the chances of is that mystery, or is that?
No, that's different. That's different else. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so a guy can have a single prostitute. People know that in countries where there are governmental services, marriages cannot be contracted by many until past early manhood, because positions must first be earned and the means acquired for supporting a home and a family before they can, for the first time, seek a suitable wife. And yet the wellspring of virility in the preceding age can with few be kept closed up and reserved for a wife. All right, notice that. For a few, not the majority. Like, remember you heard about the, some men of love cannot be restrained. All right, what are you saying? Well, what's the line between restraint and not? And here it's like, oh, few can be kept closed up and reserved for a wife. It is preferable, indeed, that it be reserved. But if owing to an uncontrollable intensity of lust, it cannot be, an intermediary course is required to prevent conjugal love from, in the meantime, perishing. So, yeah. Oh, words like that, few, really messy. Really messy. It's like my what I like to use is the writings talk about spirits talking to us, and it says it's rare that a good spirit will talk to you and that you'll be aware of, kind of thing. Some sort of an experience. It's rare. Does that mean it never happens? No. But that's kind of what I have seen in DC, is that we always say, oh, if you have spiritual communication, oh, that was bad. Devil talking to you, the angels don't do that. Wait a second, that's not what it says. It's not prevalent. It does happen, but it's rare. But it does happen. And it's like side effects on prescription drugs. They might be rare, but guess what? Somebody has a heart attack from these drugs because that's a rare side effect. Somebody's going to have it. It does happen. How do we deal with this one? You? Oh, okay. Does that give young boys a license to go out and get a prostitute? Can they keep it to just one? That's hard. You know?
Times like these, I'm really glad to have a computer geek for a son. Not interested in this kind of stuff. At this point, it will last a while.
Well,
In due time.
we'll see in a minute. It talks about why one is important, but it's kind of obvious. So here we go. This is the point-by-point reasoning for why this is. By this means, excessive and promiscuous fornications are curbed and limited, and the person thus introduced into a more restricted state, more kingdom love. All right, so there's reason number one. Yeah, that's right. And one of the great one-liners that Swedenborg has about this sexual stuff in general in Conjugial Love is wisdom is restraint. Madness, it's madness to do anything you want, and wisdom is restraint. And it's that juxtaposition of madness versus wisdom. And I think this is what he's going for here. It's wisdom to restrict oneself. It's wise to do it. 2, sexual desire, boiling at first, and as though consuming fire, is calmed and softened, and thus the lasciviousness of salaciousness, in itself foul, is tempered by something analogous to marriage. you know, like you said, fake marriage.
They don't have to live with the lady, mind you.
But it is that, it's still that restraint and that restriction and, okay.
Yeah, but about her, is she still making a living, or is she just on her own with this
Well,
guy, whether or not she's living there?
Yeah, it talks about, you know, you can only do this with a fallen woman, and it goes into detail what a fallen woman is, and that's a prostitute. You know, prostitutes, like, you know, you don't do this with the virgin, you don't do this with the innocent, you know, it's.
But what does she do then? He's only going to use her until he gets married, and then what? She has another relationship. Yeah, but is it ongoing, or does she have a break while she's with this guy? I don't know.
Well, I imagine it could be. Yeah. Depends for many, right? Many single, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I suppose that depends
There's-
on them too, how often.
It's,
This young man sees
it's not in Conjugial Love, but it is in the Arcana about prostitutes and their eternal fate. And basically he says the young prostitute can be okay if they leave it behind, but it's the people who are organizing it, you know, yeah, thank you, yeah. So now that person is like, you know, one way to take it straight to hell kind of thing. And that the girls who get caught up in it, basically, if they die at a young age, you know, they have this whole vastation process, a very strict, you know, person whipping them back into line. And if they don't, well, then it's, you know, take it downwards for them too, but.
Well, that's where their desires are, just rejection.
Not just the banishment.
Correct. But yeah, the madams, you know, straight down. Mhm. Yep. So, I mean, let's face it, kids do a lot of dumb things. So.
Maybe it's not very, but like.
So 3, by resorting to a courtesan, the virile forces are not cast away and imbecilities contracted, as they are indiscriminate and unrestricted indulgences of sexual lust.
Now, what does that mean?
Well, I think what it's saying is you start to think like an idiot if you start sleeping around with other people. Well, you just indulge yourself in all your sexual practices. You start having faulty thinking as well.
To me, the virile forces that it's talking about, what came to mind is referring to the man's seed. And they're not cast away outside of a person. But I don't know about the invisibilities. So I'm wondering if this is, I don't know, I have no idea if this is referring to self-management.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, it's interesting. I hadn't read it that way. I just took it as, you know, a guy's heat needing to get his groove on.
Swedenborg himself, speaks of a couple of women that he liked, but never married them.
But if you dig into the Journal of Dreams, not the spiritual experiences, but Journal of Dreams, he writes a fair bit about his own dealings with lust and bringing that under control as part of his process. Yeah, it's some pretty explicit stuff, actually, that in most English translations, they didn't actually translate into English. You buy a Journal of Dreams, and it'll be 1 page is in English, 1 page is in Latin. And the Latin of explicit stuff never got translated. They skip over those things. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But you know, the guy wasn't perfect at the beginning of all this, and who knows if he was perfect by the end? Probably not. But
I think it leaves me thinking that he does know what he's talking about. He has had to deal with this. Let's see. So we're still on this whole why a prostitute's okay thing, or the circumstances in which prostitute's okay. And number 4, by it, physical diseases and mental insanities are also avoided. I find it interesting that physical diseases, because honestly, that's one of the first things I think of why you don't want to use a prostitute.
Especially with not keeping latex to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
No.
right.
And maybe that does imply it's one, you know,
That's a lot of that profession seems to work, when, doesn't respect yourself. But we come back to this a little bit more later.
but I also think it's interesting that physical diseases and mental insanities are in the same category. Like, I can understand the physical diseases can be contracted from a prostitute, but where is mental insanities? I mean, you don't set up the same way you do a physical disease.
No, they're avoided because he's getting his
Right,
action.
but
And earlier it was saying, that's the
Yeah,
imbecilities,
okay.
that, hey, the guy's gonna go nuts.
all right.
Number 5. Violent adulteries are likewise guarded against, which are illicit affairs with married women, and also debaucheries, which are the violations of virgins, not to mention criminal acts too villainous to name. Remember the last thing underlined, same act there. This is not homosexuality by name, it's too villainous to name. For when a boy first reaches adolescence, he thinks of adulteries and debaucheries as being no more than acts of fornication. Thus, that one is no different from another, nor does he know in accordance with reason how to resist the enticements of some of the sex, who have carefully cultivated the art of harlotry. But in resorting to a courtesan, which is a more temperate and rational form of fornication, he can learn and see the distinctions. So I think number 5 basically is by having a prostitute, he doesn't commit adultery, right? Every now and again in the newspaper, I've been seeing, 16-year-old boy, or teacher convicted of having sexual relations with a 16-year-old boy or whatever like that. So this, it's odd when it's the female teacher doing this to me, but if a 16-year-old boy, does he fall in this case, right? He doesn't know how to resist the enticements of some of the sex, right? You know what? That's believable. If you're 16 and your teacher comes on to you, is he going to resist that? I don't know. So there's that. So honestly, what this brings up for me is the legality of prostitution. This country it's illegal, or it is illegal here, but it's illegal in the States. All states. With the exception, with the one exception of like one county in Nevada. And it's not Las Vegas. No, in Las Vegas it's illegal, but it's like the county next door to Las Vegas. Yeah. So it's like, well, gee, if you can't get a prostitute when it's allowed, by the writings, by your religion, well, shoot. I guess it's a long way to come to Australia for that, but that was one of the stunning things. And we're going through the leader, the back of the leader going, what?
Massage parlors?
Yeah, that wasn't my. Virus.
You still have to be able to afford it.
Well, that is part of it, yeah. Yep. Why do you think 14-year-olds are the ones that get pregnant, Because they don't have the money to take care of prevention and stuff like that, too. By resorting to the courtesan, one is kept away from 4 kinds of lusts, which are destructive of conjugal love of the highest degree, namely a lust to deflower, a lust for variety, a lust to rape, and a lust to seduce states of innocence. So lust and variety obviously is one that they're pointing to earlier with the, you have breast, but you only have one. Stick with that. No, that does make some sense. I mean, what's part of the allure of the whole pornography industry? Oh yeah, you get a whole smorgasbord of whatever you want, change the channel every as many times as you like. And that industry also caters to the lust for rape and seducing states of innocence and all that kind of stuff too. So, yeah.
How do the first and the last differ? Just most of the state.
Yeah, I think it's a final detail, but isn't lust the flower just about taking away a girl's virginity? She doesn't necessarily have to be mentally innocent in that state. She can be a dirty girl without any option versus, seducing the innocent is a different thing. Isn't this such happy stuff? So this is what we were talking about earlier about the age in which people marry. So none of this has been said, however, for those who can contain the lust, nor for those who are able to enter marriage as soon as they mature, so as to offer and extend the first fruits of their manhood to their wife. We're skipping ahead in the passage here. I can declare for certainty that people who die for children grow up in heaven, and when they attain a stature like that of youths, 18 years old, and of girls 15 years old in the world, they stop there, and marriages are provided them by the Lord. Moreover, that both before marriage and after, they do not know at all what licentiousness is, or that it's possible. So, a couple interesting things here, right? The ages, girls at 15, boys at 18, we're dealing in our house with the maturity level difference between a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old. And the 19-year-old is more than 4 years ahead of the 15-year-old boy in terms of maturity on some things. And I grew up around this whole idea that girls mature faster than boys, and boy, I am seeing that clearly now. So interesting, right? So is this suggestive of the idea that we should be able to be married at 18 for boys and 15 for girls? Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, I'm there too. And yet, it's throwing a pretty low bar out there as far as the age got to clear. Sure. No, I get that. But as a thought exercise, is this saying marry at a younger age and lower? Because I've generally been on the idea of that. No, it's better to marry older than younger.
Yeah, you hear about the child brides that feels like, oh my goodness, are you kidding? But oh wait, maybe there's actually can we look at this
How old?
Very immature.
How old were you when you met Owen? No. Okay, so you met on the young side of things, but we've been talking with Zach and Kay, like, hey, generally I did not marry the person we were dating at 19. That's just so yeah, it's interesting. So it's to the first paragraph of this, if you can't enter marriage as soon as you mature, if you can't enter marriage at what's maturity, 18-ish, give or take. If you're not going to get married at 18, well, okay, it's preferable to wait till you're married, but if you can't. You know?
But life would be so different if we had been permitted to marry when we were this age, and we would be together now. We wouldn't have sex, so boy, life would be different.
Yep. Yep.
Kind of like the wait a little while, yeah. I mean, I didn't make out of this mistake. We did end up getting married. Well, I was 23, and I gone to religion and made other cars, you know, it all came back to that, but I felt I was mature by then, and I did what I wanted.
Sure.
So, I think if you're in a heavenly state, it's different because you don't need to go through that. You know, children in heaven don't need to mature because they're there.
Yes, it's different when you've grown up in that environment. Absolutely.
Because I don't know this world cope with all the things that we deal with.
I totally agree. And yet, then you're in this state though of if you're not married as soon as you mature, then it opens up all these alternative pathways to get there. So yes, I agree, and that's where this comes into play. So it's what I said in the email announcing the class was just how much this part of the book defers to practicalities. And this is just another instance of it, of saying, yeah, okay, you can't get married as soon as you mature, fine. Oh, you can't get married because you've got to go to university to get a degree to support a house, and you got to do all those things first. Yeah, okay, you're not going to be waiting until you're 24 years old. So, well, make sure in the in-between state, from the time you've matured, to the time you're ready to get married and able to get married, that you take this restricted approach, so that way when you actually do get married, you're on the right path. Excuse me. So, yeah, it's just, I don't feel like this is what I was taught in high school. Yeah, guys, go ahead. If you feel a little hot, just go get yourself a prostitute. It's okay. There's one. That was the way I think it was taught to us, is that these things, exceptions exist, but boy, that's not for you. That's for everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's not how we look at things.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah.
When I was younger, those things.
Okay, so the next section is taking a mistress. So this is another bullet pointed thing we put together. The taking of a mistress is of two kinds, which differ greatly from each other. One being in conjunction with the wife, the other being in separation from the wife. All right, so you got a wife and a mistress.
So in those cases, though, it's if you're married.
Correct.
So
Yes.
before marriage is about a prostitute. Once you're married,
Well, before is fornication, then a prostitute,
Oh.
right? And so now, yes, we are in the category of if you're married, you can have a wife and a mistress, or separation from the wife. Taking a mistress in conjunction with the wife is altogether forbidden to Christians and abhorrent. It is polygamy, which has been banned from the Christian world and ought to be banned. It is licentiousness, by which the conjugal inclination, the precious treasure of Christian life, is lost. Okay? So taking a mistress and having a wife, no. Bad. Legitimate reasons for taking a mistress in such a circumstance are the same as those for legitimate divorce, when the wife is nevertheless retained in the home. All right. This is a refresher. What's the reasons for adultery? Reasons for divorce: adultery, manifest obscenities, and malicious desertion, which includes licentiousness. What are manifest obscenities is what you're thinking? Yeah, it's not clearly defined. So I think it leaves it to your imagination of it. But what I want to go to next is, what are these legitimate reasons for taking mistress? There's quite a list. Quite a list. Just reasons for taking a mistress in such a circumstance are the same as those separation from the bed. There are legitimate reasons for separation, and there are just reasons. Legitimate reasons are determined by the verdicts of judges, and just ones by the verdicts of a husband acting on his own judgment. Both legitimate and just reasons for separation from the bed were listed in summary form previously. These include, all right, so here's our beginning of the list, and it's going to go on for a bit. Impairments of the body, all right, so get that. So you can separate from your wife if she is physically impaired.
Or if he is. No.
Yeah, this is about she.
It's referring to the man taking mistress.
Yep.
Okay.
So, which are diseases by which the whole body is so thoroughly infected as to raise the possibility of death by contagion. Conditions of this sort include malignant and pestilential fevers, leprosies, venereal diseases, cancerous sores. Other afflictions are conditions by which the whole body becomes so thoroughly burdened as to make close companionship impossible, or which are accompanied by unhealthy exhalations and noxious vapors, either from the body's surface or from its inner parts, particularly from the stomach and lungs. Conditions involving the surface of the body include malignant lesions, warts, pustules, scurvy-like discoloration, swelling of the skin, virulent scabies, especially if the face is disfigured by these afflictions. Exhalations emanating from the stomach, constantly offensive, foul-smelling, and rank eructations. That's a great word there, eructations.
I mean, like, if you keep belching smelly burps, I'm gonna get somebody else, so why don't you
Exactly. Emanating from the lungs, foul and rancid expirations issuing from tubercules, ulcerations of abscesses, or from the presence of corrupted blood or serum. In addition, there's more. To these, there are also other conditions having various names. For example, chronic faintness, marked by complete physical languor and loss of strength. Paralysis, which involves a loosening or slackening of the membranes and ligaments required for movement. So like if Murray's knees to deplete, maybe Lori can just say, I'm going to get in, not a mistress, but a mister. Huh? Epilepsy, permanent disability due to strokes or apoplexies. Certain other chronic disorders, intestinal obstruction and suffering, hernial protrusion, besides other diseases which we learn from pathology. Impairments of the mind, which are just reasons for separation from the bed or from the home, include psychosis, organic psychosis, having too much organic food, right? Insanity, actual idiocy or imbecility, amnesia, and other like things. Reasons seized without the need of a judge of these instances are just grounds for taking a mistress, because they are just grounds for separation. That's right. Yep. We're on the same page today. Because yeah, that's right. There's some of that stuff is very treatable nowadays. Yep. But
What is sarcasm?
I assume it's like going crazy. Yep. So I don't know what organic psychosis is. Magic mushrooms, psychedelics, maybe. But yeah, but look again. It's the point of me writing all this out is to show you this massive list of practicalities. You know, it's this whole idea we have, you know, one person till death do you part, hopefully eternity should together. And yet he's throwing in these things, well, look, you know, the real world does count, right? The real world counts. And sometimes your wife's gonna have warts or scurvy-like discoloration, swelling of the skin. And you know, that's okay if you want to separate from the bed, particularly if she's got rank eruptations, because you can't stand the smell of her all night long. I think but I have to say, you know, as has been mentioned already today about this, is this from a man's point of view, blah, 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 because honestly, isn't this the kind of stuff the wife's going to be upset about? It's usually the wife complaining about the guy with their rank reputations, constantly offensive, foul smelling.
He says snore.
Oh, yeah. So you gotta suffer through that.
Breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing about hearing loss. Yeah, you don't get a pass for that. No. So, but yeah, again, the point is, look at all this practicality, which, you know, it's, if you look at how Jesus teaches in the New Testament, you know, he teaches to an ideal. This is adultery. It's not just the physical act, but any man who looks at a woman with adultery, with lustful eyes, is committed adultery, right? There's this ideal. You don't even do that. But then when the woman is caught in adultery, it's go and sin no more. So there's this ideal he preaches to, but there's also this kind of real that he says, well, you know what, these things we can deal with. So long as, what was the touchstone for this? As long as you're not opposed to conjugal love. You haven't assented saying, this is a good thing that I've done being in adultery. You know? Yeah, right. It's, oh, you know, I got some situations here, and I need to satisfy my body's cravings, as it were. So I'm going to do this in a disciplined way. I'm not going to just let it run. I'm not opposed to conjugal love. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is the best, right? Isn't that key? You know, I'm not trying to make something bad good. I think that's a big piece here. We did that. Okay, so those were just reasons. These are weighty reasons.
So are the judicial and just, those are judicial.
Okay. Weighty reasons are real ones, right? The real ones are founded on justice, okay? To gain a concept of these reasons, it is enough to list some that are real weighty ones, as for example, a lack of parental love and consequent rejection of the little children, right? So little Jenny is beaten by her parents, and so when she's a mom, she is rejecting her kids. So if your wife doesn't take care of your kids, that is a weighty reason to dismiss her, right? Temperance, drunkenness, lack of cleanliness, shamelessness, having an urge to broadcast secrets of the home, having an urge to argue, to strike blows. All right, now strike blows, that's a big one, because that's something I think we see in the world today very clearly, right? You know, that's no go, you know, and it's, you know, how often have we heard the idea, oh no, you're married, you guys are together. No, this is a weighty reason. You're striking blows, you know, that's fair. To take revenge, to act maliciously, to steal, to deceive. An internal dissimilarity causing antipathy. A shameless demand for the man's performance of his conjugal duty, causing him to become a cold stone. Resorting to sorcery and witchcraft, extreme impiety, and other like things. I've got this feeling that cauldron in the basement is too dense. she's been doing witchcraft on it. But,
These are way few reasons for separation, which also are reasons for
yep. Yep. So. Hadn't thought of that.
So just that, two strikes. To block.
I think the idea is that, yes, talk about the wife, and I think it's fair to reverse that role around. If the man's doing these things, it's fair. You know, because these aren't, this list is clearly not gender oriented. You know, men and women can get drunk and be shameless and whatnot. But yeah, I do think the domestic violence thing here is real, because I think that's probably one of our big problems in society is, you know, married partners not treat each other well. So, you know, doctrinally, you're on solid ground to say, see it, goodbye, with that. But I also want to point to the thing of, and other like things. This is not an exhaustive list. You know, there are a few times where it gives us these lists, like even in the previous one we looked at, with all the physical things, and like things were told there as well. You know, it's not just if she has warts. It could be something that's not on that list. That comes later. Maybe she's got.
She doesn't have warts, but she has moles.
Well, think about, like, you know, Ebola, right? Very contagious, you know, super life-threatening disease. It's not on that list because it probably didn't exist in the consciousness of Swedenborg at the time. But that's a good reason to say, yeah, I'm going to separate you from the bed. We have COVID isolations these days. Oh, you know what? Spouse has COVID. Guess what? I'm going to sleep somewhere else. Thank you very much. Yeah. So it's important to realize it's other like things. Use your brain. So why is this stuff allowed? And this is good. Men who take mistresses for legitimate, just, and real weighty reasons may be at the same time in a state of conjugal love. When we say that they may be at the same time in a state of conjugal love, we mean that they may keep this love concealed within them. For this love does not die in the vessel in which it exists, but becomes dormant. In men who prefer marriage to taking a mistress and resort to it as for the aforesaid reasons, conjugal love is preserved because of the following considerations. Because taking a mistress in such a circumstance does not stand opposed to conjugal love, because it does not entail separation from that love, because it constitutes only a veiling over of that love, and because this veil is removed from such men after death. Right? And yeah, this again goes back to that opening statement. You know, the big problem in this section is a lot of adultery, rationalizing, justifying. That's the problem. In this situation, nobody's doing those things. By adultery here in the following discussions, we mean licentiousness as opposed to marriage. Because it is opposed because it violates the covenant for life established between the partners, sunders their love, defiles it, and closes off the union inaugurated at the time of their betrothal and established at the outset of their marriage. For the following pledge and covenant, the conjugal love of one man with one wife unites their souls. All right, so now it's switching over to adultery as opposed to mistresses. Now, this is important here, right? Adultery does not undo this union because it cannot be undone. Right? I don't know about you, but that sits pretty heavy to me. Adultery does not undo the marriage union. It cannot be undone. But it closes it off. Like one who stops up a spring at its source and so prevents its flow, filling its reservoir with feculent and fetid waters. In similar manner does adultery cover with slime and overspread conjugal love, whose origin is the union of souls. Then when it has been so overspread, there surges from below a love of adultery, which as it grows and causes the person to become carnal, and rises up against conjugal love and destroys it. From this comes the opposition of adultery in marriage. Adultery does not undo the union.
What does that mean by?
Really?
Saying it's not just reason to.
I read it. I mean, I'm reading it as, yeah. If you commit adultery, spiritually, you are still married to me. Because adultery doesn't undo the union. The
Yeah,
union
that's what I
or-
just find in my book.
Yeah, that's why I'm repeating it, because it's a big deal. I think a lot of times we say, oh, well, you're justified in getting a divorce from adultery. But there's still something there. You know, when Jesus teaches in the New Testament, oh, if you dispose of your wife for adultery, and she goes out and gets, or if you unjustly divorce your wife, and she goes out and gets remarried, she's committing adultery, is what he's saying. And that speaks to this. If I've divorced my wife unjustly, you're committing adultery because spiritually you're still married to me. Because adultery that I've committed doesn't undo the union. Oh boy. Yeah. And it cannot be undone. So whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me in some form.
Well, I'm curious about it too, because I feel like, so it's talking about the marriaging, and then a marriage, I mean, if it's just a contract, you know, like an earthly thing, at what point does it? More than that, which can't be. The interest is elsewhere. How is it not done?
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Well, it must be undone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what you're listing, you know, it's the separation of hearts and stuff like that, is more than just adultery. You know, adultery can be just the act. But at the same time, it says it cannot be undone. So no matter what, I guess, whatever reasons you give. So, but I get this, I like the imagery it says, all right? So, you know, if you have this, you know, this spring of love, what does adultery do? Closes it. And it lets all this crappy stuff happen, quite literally. And so what surges below is the person to become carnal, right? You become a sense-based person, sensual-based. So this again, to me, speaks to the sexual revolutions that have been happening in the past 60 years, right? You know, people have become more carnal, more sensual. Oh, my body says this feels good. Why does it feel good? Well, because we've closed off some of this higher rational wisdom stuff, right? We've closed off that. And so then this comes and takes over. And this is, you know, there's no question in my mind that culture has become more and more opposed to marriage.
Similar to the reason why people go to hell, because they remain.
Yeah. They're unwilling to be human, they want to just be human. So, and again, it's about intellectually giving yourself over to this, right? You can, I met this woman, this is one of the intermediaries between me and Daniel Coates, and she was talking about this stuff, how she, you know, doesn't believe in marriage. She's probably in her 50s, had gotten out of a marriage, and we were having this discussion. I remember specifically asking her, I said, well, what, if you don't have boundaries, you know, well, what prevents somebody from committing adultery? What What prevents you from sleeping with anybody you want? What's bad about adultery? She goes, oh, it's just the lies. It's not the physical act in her eyes. It was the lies that the partners are telling each other to keep it secret. And that's the problem. It's not the act itself. Like, well, you know, lies aren't good, sure, but it's this giving over to the sensuality, right? Giving over to the body's desires. How do you, yeah, how do you play that space? Because I guess you can say, I don't want to do these things, but I don't care if you do, kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not going to be committing adultery, but if you and your wife, you want to do that, you know, live and let live kind of thing, I guess. Shows that there's still some conscience on the part of the first party.
The manifest obscenities and all that, those are reasons for separation, is that correct?
Those are reasons for divorce.
For divorce. And divorce is the marriage union undone?
Yeah.
Because it says here, it cannot be undone.
To me, that's talking to me about a spiritual union, not a natural union. You know, manifest obscenity, adultery, all stuff. There you have the legitimate reason to undo your natural world marriage
But you
contract.
still have your spiritual connection. And right, okay. So they're saying we should remarry.
No, doesn't say that.
Because spiritual union with somebody that you divorce, but a non-spiritual union with someone that you remarry.
That's not what it says. You're adding words.
Well, I'm trying to.
I mean,
There must be. Maybe they don't have that spirit. Oh, sure, yeah, but I'm thinking from the writing's perspective. Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, if that's what the writings are trying to tell us. But no, they have reasons why you cannot be forever with that person. And I don't see how this doesn't fall in that category.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what I think she's getting at. If you have a legitimate reason for a divorce, and then you get remarried, are you spiritually married to two different people? I think that's the question, right?
Yeah, and I guess just still pursuing. So how does adultery not constitute? It's because they're, now is this assuming they have a love of adultery, or is this just really acts of adultery? Love of adultery would be a reason that would undo.
I mean, you're in the chapter about love of adultery, right? That's what this whole section is about. And it's saying adultery does not undo this union. You know, and you can back up, right? Following the pledge and covenants of the wedding ceremony, the conjugal love of one man, one wife unites their souls. So it's not just like, you know, a guy and a girl sleep together before marriage. That's not saying they're united forever.
Mm-hmm.
But once you've gone through the ceremony, you've pledged, you've made that covenant, boom, that unites your souls. Adultery does not undo this. So you're still, and even if you have a legitimate reason to divorce, you're still connected. So yeah, it's not, yeah, it is a legitimate reason, but you're still connected. And I mean, there's a certain fairness to that I think I get. I mean, you see people get divorced, they have kids, and even if the two people, yeah, exactly, not that order. And yet those two people still are connected just through the practicalities of life, right? You know, whether it be transporting the kids around or raising the kids in some way, there is still a connection, and I think that's reflective of this, isn't it? There's still.
Well, let's assume they don't have kids, theoretically, they still have this union.
Correct.
And so, yeah, that does then go back to the question of how many of these deep unions can a person form?
Yeah,
Like, if a couple divorces on the basis of manifest obscenities or whatever, some legitimate reason, they still have a union now.
mhm,
And then, like, she goes off and marries somebody else,
mhm.
who's also, whose second marriage this also is. Are they also, yeah, so. How does this work?
Yeah,
This is one of those questions, when I die.
well, this is where,
Yeah.
There must be some way.
Right.
well, he does talk about how it goes. That you meet up in the spiritual world with what I believe was your first spouse, and you kind of cycle through and see, where do who do you actually belong with? So,
But it also, I mean, it still sits with me that it's weird to think that there are these depths of union. With multiple people.
yeah. Well, I'm noticing that we're over time, and we have not covered anywhere near the end of these slides. So I just want to throw this last one out here because it makes a good point. This is not a free-for-all, right? These exceptions are not a free-for-all. As long as this relationship with a mistress continues, physical conjunction with the wife is prohibited. This was a bit earlier. It is prohibited because in such an event, conjugal love, which in itself is spiritual, chaste, pure, and sacred, becomes natural, defiled, and stale, and thus perishes. Therefore, in order to preserve this love, it is proper that the relationship in taking a mistress for real, weighty reasons be carried on with the one and not with both at the same time. So if your wife is giving some rank eructations, you can put her aside and use the mistress, but you can't go back to the wife until you get rid of the mistress. Right? Not a free for all. Anyway, so yeah, there's plenty more. But yeah, I hope you got this isn't as black and white, I guess, is how I see it. Yeah, and it really goes back to what sends you to hell in general. What sends you into hell? It's not doing something evil, it's loving evil, right? What destroys conjugal love? Loving adultery. That's the opposition. And it's key with all sorts of evils. The writers talk about no matter what evil it is, the real danger is mentally saying this is okay. The hells are working hard to destroy your conscience. If they destroy your conscience, and all of a sudden, oh, well, that's okay, and you've intellectually assented to it, and therefore you can love it because you can now justify it. It's okay. And down you go, that broad path that many go through. That to me is what Conjugial Love, the book here, is trying to get us to avoid. Saying, yeah, you have this stuff, you can do this in ways that aren't going to kill you eternally. But don't let these excuses and these stipulations and whatnot take you to a place where you love it and justify it. So there you go.
Oh, so two things going from this. Not everybody. Help you in any way.
He'll work with you.
In the future, it's a good job.
Yeah, he'll work with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I totally agree. That's one of those things, right? We often don't realize just how merciful the Lord is. He's way more merciful than I think we give him credit for. So there you have it. If anybody's on YouTube, see you later. Oh yeah, you can't see me wave. All right. Well,